Please, we want to the stage Richard Furness of The Guardian. Oh, there we go, yeah. You're with us now.
So I've just spent 5 days in Glastonbury, so I feel very at home. The mic's hello Gherkin.
All the way from Worthy Farm, we have Richard here. Now, I was very excited when we got Richard agreeing to speak here. Amongst all the many, the amount of phone calls that went into organising today, and the amount of them that have absolutely lived up and surpassed the potential, like Dr. Simon before. But this is one I'm really looking forward to. Because Richard, to get it absolutely right, I will check, the Managing Director of Consumer Revenues and Publishing at The Guardian. A fascinating position to be in for a number of reasons. You've been with The Guardian 21 years and covered so many roles in that time, including marketing director, the gentleman responsible for the Three Pigs ad, which I think is one of the most iconic adverts in that space. Fantastic. But challenging on revenues. And it's a fascinating time for you as a business because, even 3-4 years ago, you were posting 57 million losses, yet for this year, a profit of 0.8 million from a business that has dedicated itself to not putting a paywall in place. I think that's fascinating. So that's kind of the basis I wanted to get into discussing that. So let's start about that commitment to not doing a paywall. Let's talk about that a little bit. Where did that decision come from?
So it was part ideological. It was part us thinking that, and I think this is absolutely borne out if you take a look around the world at the moment, that the world or society is a better place if as many people as possible have access to free, open, independent journalism. Right? So I think if you look at America at the moment and 0.9% of people can afford to purchase the New York Times or do purchase the New York Times. I think that's quite a dangerous place, and I think that can lead you to where America is at the moment. It's not keeping free and open against all odds. It's not some sort of mania we have to do it, but actually it was half ideology. It was half thinking the world's a better place if people have access to free information and quality journalism, but also thinking there is a different way to do this at The Guardian because of our fairly unique position. And I should state at the outset, this is, we are quite a unique organisation. We're owned by a trust, so I'm not up here saying that this is a strategy that the FT could follow or the Times could follow, because I think it will become very clear that they couldn't because of our ownership structure. We're owned by the Scott Trust. We have been for over 100 years. The Scott Trust exists. It's a non-profit. All the profit that it makes, whenever we've made profit over the years, is poured back into The Guardian's journalism. No one's getting rich, right? So there isn't a shareholder, there isn't a Murdoch figure. If there were, we'd never be able to follow the sort of strategy that we have followed. So that was the sort of nemesis of it, was thinking, do you want to try and cut off at the time when everyone, the FT and the time, everyone were thinking about paywalls. It wasn't like we just hid away and didn't think about it. We absolutely considered it and we run the numbers. But we also thought about The Guardian's place in the world and the importance of making sure our journalism was free and open. But it's a challenge. I mean, it's a real challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. But that focus on the importance of news, I mean, anybody who's following any of the coverage of Cannes in the last fortnight, Droga 5, if you haven't seen it, fantastic campaign with the New York Times about the importance of journalism. We think about your organisation, the work of Carol Cadwallader and all the fantastic investigative journalism around things like Cambridge Analytica and the ongoing Aaron Banks discussion. How do you see that? In a world of fake news, how do you see the effect of Trump, the effect of Brexit? How's that changing the way readers engage with your product?
So, it's been an extraordinary the 21 years I've worked at The Guardian, I think have been an extraordinary time to be at a media organisation. I think of a shift from, I think when I started, I'm not taking credit for this, but when I started, The Guardian was the 9th smallest UK newspaper, and now it's one of in the top 3 most read English language news websites around the world. I mean, it's just been this extraordinary sort of proliferation from being a newspaper to a digital organisation. That's been extraordinary. But in the last 3 years in particular, the effect that things like Trump in America, the things, Brexit in this country, have had on our news organisation and many other news organisations has been extraordinary. I mean, the recognition that people now have for the importance of news and the importance of independent news that's not coming from some dodgy village in Chechnya, or it is. I think people have woken up and realised, and for every time that Trump will talk about fake news, we will all see benefit, right? We will all see more people subscribing, more people donating. The New York Times see that more than anyone else. If you look at the charts of the New York Times and when people subscribe to the New York Times, literally you can pin it to press conference in the Oval Office, attack on the press, subscriptions up, and I think we all benefit a bit from that, certainly.
So when you're in that world and you've taken the decision you're not going to have a paywall, what fascinates me about The Guardian is you have the structure of asking for donation and asking for people to help. What is the journey? How do you segment your customers? How do you understand that ask for the donation through to delivering people a subscription? What does that look like?
I guess that's the unique position we're in at The Guardian. We were in when we started this, what we called a relationship strategy 4 years ago. At the time we had a printed newspaper, and we've been having a drive on the newspaper. The newspaper's only available in the UK. Having a big drive on the newspaper for a number of years to try and get as many people to subscribe as possible, like the FT, like the Times. If you're reliant on the kind of UK retail industry, that's quite tough. That's the very volatile newsstand sales. So all of us have been sort of driving towards subscriptions on our print products, and the FT and Times and others have been doing that very successfully digitally. For us, I guess the unique challenge at The Guardian was, how do you have a successful reader revenue strategy on your website when you absolutely have to keep every word, every article, every picture freely available to everyone around the world, right? And that's quite a challenge. That's if we were to break into groups and brainstorm that one, that was what we were faced with 3 years ago. And we had this amazing moment where we did exactly that, and we broke into groups like, okay, so if it all has to be free, and we can't cheat that, we can't say, well, free for 24 hours, or it only has to be free in the UK and the US and nowhere else in the world. We weren't absolutely not cheating it. This was about every single piece of content we write has to be freely available to everyone in the world at the same time. And then we had this amazing group of people who sort of came out of one of these groups and said, essentially what we have now is 2 digital strategies, right? Well, it's one strategy, but 2 products that come out of that. One is subscriptions, so one is digital subscriptions, and one is what we call contributions, but is donations. And I guarantee you, if we had a chat at a bar for 10 minutes, at least 10 of you would say to me, why do you keep asking me at the end of an article? That's what we mean by contributions. It's for asking for donations to Guardian journalism. So we have those 2 big products. That's how we make money digitally. And both of those have been incredibly successful across the last 3.5 years. And as you said, have got us from a position of losing £58 million 3 years ago, and on track to lose a lot more than that halfway through that year, to making a profit of £800,000 in the year that's just finished. So both of those products, digital subscriptions and contributions, have been wildly successful for us. Digital subscriptions was about premium experiences. So again, if you can't charge for content, we're not going to put podcasts out a day earlier for subscribers. We ruled all of those sort of things out. So then for us, subscriptions is about premium experiences. So it's about experiencing that content that's freely available to everyone in a better way. So if any of you subscribe to our app, that's a way that many, many people now consume Guardian content. If you pay $5.99 a month, you get a much better experience in that app. You have a live feed, which is almost like a Twitter-like view of the world. There's a Discover part of the app where we sort of surface and resurface long reads for our readers. So there's, everything that we surface through, you could find if you went hunting for it, and you could find it somewhere. But this is about making it a really pleasurable experience for people. All of it, by the way, as Simon gone, but all of it, I completely agree with Simon. Everything we do leads on this emotional ask and the support The Guardian, whether it's subscribing, whether it's asking for donations. So that's digital subscriptions. It's about a premium experience, and that's doing brilliantly for us at the moment. And then we have donations, which is a bit that's quite unique to us, and I think that's more the bit where I was saying that's a sort of unique thing for The Guardian. That's something we can do because we are owned by a trust, and we can talk very clearly about profit coming back into The Guardian and the independent journalism we're doing. Now, donations is incredible, right? It's an amazing part of our business model. As I said, it's gone from being a sort of group of 3 or 4 people suggesting it as an idea, which was essentially, why don't we just ask people for support? Let's not assume we have to give something back. Let's, if anything, we're giving back a sort of warm feeling and people feeling like they're supporting independent journalism. That's gone from being 0 3 years ago to a very, very substantial part of our business model now, multi-millions of pounds a year that we make from that contribution ask. We're getting better and better at it. We're getting better at learning when to ask, about how to ask, about who to ask, but it is in its infancy. It's 3 years old. Roughly, there are two things that really drive that ask. One is sort of big, scary societal shifts. So the week after Brexit, the week after Trump, as 2 quite obvious examples. A huge amount of people donated to The Guardian in the weeks after those big events. So moments that just make people around the world sit up and think, Christ, this is a bit scary, and the world's a better place if The Guardian keeps on doing what it's doing. Okay, so that was, whenever big moments like that happen, we see an influx of people donating. The other thing, the other way that people are doing this all the time, by the way, these are the 2 sort of outstanding things. The other way is when we just do brilliant journalism. So Carol Cadwalla, you named as a brilliant example. Amelia Gentleman, when she uncovered the Windrush scandal, for example. So brilliant bits of Guardian or Observer journalism are the other moments where we see this huge influx of people donating. We're learning all the time. Every day we pore over what articles have driven support and have driven contributions, and there's some fascinating ones in there. You see some themes around environmentalism and politics, but also some things that you would never expect. The Thai cave story is one that springs to mind. An emotional story, but not one you'd necessarily link to then giving money to The Guardian. But that did very well for us as well. So we're learning all the time about it, and we're learning about how to talk about donations, talk about subscriptions, depending on where you are in the world and your sort of habit on our site.
So is that the topics of the stories and the geolocation, that's how you categorise your audience, and that's the main way you do it. What do you see, I guess, conscious of time, drawing this to a close, where do you see the subscription model going for you? Where do you see the development? So, for example, in the way The Guardian handle their partnerships, you've brought more journalists into that. So commercially, when we're engaging with the clients, we're dealing with proper journalists and making sure that content is as strong as the main paper content. Where do you see the subscription model taking you and how you recruit new people?
I mean, it couldn't be more critical to our business model. So again, the success we've had from minus 58 million to plus 1 million, reader revenue growth is absolutely at the heart of that. I think everyone here would know what a difficult advertising market it is at the moment. They're the 2 main revenue streams of any newspaper. It's your advertising or your money you make from your readers, and it's for reader revenue growth that's really sort of turned the dial for us and shifted us into profit making. So subscriptions, whether it's a print subscription, a digital subscription, or a contribution, is absolutely at the heart of everything we do, and I think we will only get better at it. I think I like the comment earlier about people working more closely together doing it. It does feel a bit like in the old days about printing and distribution with newspapers when everyone used to do it very separately. I don't think we've yet come together as an NMA or a group to think about how we could do that, but, with the end user in mind. So I think there is some conversations to be had there. But absolutely for us, whether it's print, whether it's digital, a recurring relationship with our readers is exactly what we want for our business model, and from everything we're seeing is exactly what our readers want around the world as well. That's the interesting thing for us. It's not just for sort of, when we look at motivations, sorry, I should just say the sort of motivations to contribute, so why people contribute. I talked about when they contribute, and you can make some very obvious infers from that. But actually, when we talk to people, and we do this all the time, we have a UX lab back at our office, and we ask them, why do you give money? Some incredible range of motivations that people talk to us about, but the one I always love is to keep The Guardian open for everyone else. And I mean, that says something about The Guardian's audience. So it's not about, I know I can consume it anyway for nothing, but actually I'll give you £10 a month or £20 a month so everyone else in the world can have access to it, either in countries where people are very poor or kids 18-year-olds who aren't going to pay any money for. So to stop The Guardian putting a paywall up is one of the biggest motivations people donate to us from, which I think is a lovely thing
Wonderful. And what a wonderful way to end the day. That's been fantastic. Richard, thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Furness from The Guardian.